black and brown children are shot by police officers because it looked like they held a gun, or it looked like they were up to no good. And black children are already punished at a higher rate than white children. And if you add guns into that mix, I think we need to think about what's going to happen.
We also know, just touching on what I just said, many schools have experienced the danger of guns in schools already. If we look at some of the incidents that have just happened just this year, in Minnesota, a school liaison officer sitting on a bench talking with some students, a third grader pulled the trigger on the officer's firearm, causing it to strike the floor. In Georgia, a social studies teacher barricaded himself inside a classroom and fired a gun through an exterior window. In California, a teacher and reserve officer accidentally discharged a firearm while teaching a public safety class. In Virginia, an SRO accidentally fired his gun inside a middle school in Alexandria, Virginia during school hours. And so when we look at some of these examples, and we look at a place like Arkansas that has over 200 school districts, again...
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
In any of these instances that you just, did anyone get hit or shot or killed?
No, thankfully.
No. Thank you.
None of these incidents.
These four right here. Thank you.
Yep.
You may proceed.
And so as we look at a place like Arkansas that has over 200 school districts, and if you think about the amount of school districts that may opt into the program, and you're potentially talking about hundreds, if not possibly thousands of guns introduced into a school environment, you know, the exponential growth that you may see in unintentional shootings that may happen in these schools. And this is happening, this will create a danger every single day for something that shows no evidence to actually keep schools safer, right? Which is what we're trying to point out here. And I know that you've heard from, you know, the other side of this argument that will talk about how teachers can deter and stop active school shooters. The evidence that we have doesn't show that. If you follow along there in the presentation, according to the FBI reports on active shooter situations, of 250 active shooter incidents, armed civilians successfully stopped the shooter in only 7 cases. In contrast, unarmed civilians successfully intervened in 22 incidents. Of these incidents, unarmed principals, teachers, or other school staff and students confronted or restrained the shooters to end the threat in 59% of these cases. And this is not to say, I think what this slide shows you and this statistic shows you is just how few, you know, when we talk about a good guy stopping a bad guy with a gun, how few times that civilians, armed civilians, actually intervene in these cases. You know, coming from a study from the FBI, which again is an important source that we look at. I want to touch on the Salt Bowl incident.
Yes, just 2 weeks ago we saw the confusion at Salt Bowl just when they thought there was a shooter in the stadium. More guns in that situation would not have been helpful. The quickness and the chaos that occur during a shooting, there's no time to react, and more guns could have led to more trouble.
Yeah, and that was a situation, obviously, and I know that that's been a topic of conversation here, you know, where it was just the possibility that people thought that there was actually an active shooter there, and we saw the chaos that kind of erupted, and what could have happened there if several people would have been carrying in that stadium. I think could have really added to the tragedy that people were injured leaving the stadium, but possibly it could have even been even more of a tragedy than that, right? And kind of touching to what Eve said,